And my
Mm-hmm.
story was often that didn't matter how many figures I had in my salary, I was always living pretty much paycheck to paycheck because I grew up in an
Yeah.
environment where there was never extra, right? So
Yes.
even when I had extra, I
Yes.
found a way to use it, to spend it.
Welcome back to Deep Roots Wellness Podcast. Today's conversation is about meaning. How the meaning we make about our experiences quietly shapes who we believe we are, how safe we feel in the world, and how we experience things like money, power, and self trust. I'm joined by Jennifer Herrera, and together we explore how meaning making becomes the lens through which we experience our lives, often without even realizing it. The conversation is an invitation to notice that lens and to consider what becomes possible when old meanings no longer define who we are. Let's get started. Jennifer, welcome. I would like to start by you sharing a bit about your journey and what led you to begin teaching women the inner skills to wealth.
Well, my journey has been amazing. It's been one that I don't think I always valued because I was comparing my life to what I
Mm,
think we've all been kind of told this is what a good life is.
yeah.
But after a while, whether it was meeting new people and hearing myself tell my story, I realized I've had a really different story, and I haven't missed out. So for me, I've been born and raised in Los Angeles. I
Mm-hmm.
left here for about 10 years and came back in 2012. But my career really has been it started in fashion retail, it was in startup,
Mm,
I've been in tech, I've been in academia, and the last role I was in inside organization was in healthcare. And it was probably the most pivotal, not just for timing of where I was at in my life, but really just to be in a position of service during such unbelievable time in human history that we
yeah.
happen to be, here for. And a little anecdotal thing I'll say because it just came forward is at some point I remember doing a report in the fifth grade, and this was back in the day where we had encyclopedias, and that was about it. And that's what you used when you go to the library to do your report.
Yes.
And I remember doing a report on Margaret Mead, and I
Mm-hmm.
made the decision right then that a good life, an important life, was when you were going to be written about in an
Mm,
encyclopedia. Because for me, I was very much valuing the work that she had done as a cultural
yeah.
anthropologist. And I didn't know that in that way then, but that's essentially what
Mm-hmm.
I feel like has been my path. I am very
Mm-hmm.
curious about the human condition, about the human experience.
Yeah.
And it evolved early on with me asking a lot of kind of why questions, mostly to my mother
Mm-hmm.
initially, because I was really sensitive and challenged with the things that we can do as humans. And I just actually recently took some time and did Tony Robbins online summit. I've never, of course, I've known Tony who he is, but I've never done any
Mm-hmm.
of his stuff. And he talks a lot about his pain around suffering. And it was another awareness of me identifying that that's it for me. And I've talked about it in
Yeah.
my podcast. I didn't even realize, but it's just been my sensitivity. And so it directed my path. In my career, I was within successive leadership roles. I worked at Gap Inc. back in the day when it was like
Mm-hmm.
retail was very different. The online experience didn't quite exist initially. And they were a really young company at the time. They had amazing leadership development. And I feel like that set the trajectory for me of what I was already here to do, but it
Mm-hmm.
gave me the support. I've had, for the most part, really amazing mentors and bosses. And I was always being invited to the next role and the next role because I was a career woman. I did not get to have a
Yeah.
family. And that became my life's work. And I love learning and growth and people. And now I really appreciate that. I really appreciate commerce, like the exchange. Like I love just
Mm-hmm.
going to a coffee shop and being around all of that. It makes me feel alive because of that experience that's happening with people. I also say I'm more of like a extroverted introvert. Like I do enjoy that, but I do spend a lot of time alone.
Yeah.
Um, and I will just say that it led me, for a long time I thought I was going to be an attorney, and then I made a decision not to do that. Mostly I think out
Mm-hmm.
of my own fear of my own ability, and then also the debt I was already in with undergraduate. But
Mm-hmm.
I was encouraged to do like become a therapist, and I really knew back then that I was like, I feel like I will be really depressed because
Yeah.
I just felt everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I end up finding this graduate program. This is in my like mid to late 20s. And it
Mm-hmm.
was a master's degree in spiritual psychology here in Los Angeles.
Mm.
And they actually had a marriage family therapy program. And that was initially what I signed up to do, which would have been like a
Mm-hmm.
5 year program. And then you'd have to go do your 3,000 hours. I mean, it was a long
Yeah.
journey. This program changed my life. And I do believe
Mm.
that I would say, I think about 3,500 people have had the chance to go through this program since it began, I believe in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And it was transformational. It was these two doctors essentially that created a curriculum around the understanding of psychology and how it changed when it became psychology. And what I mean by that is if you look up the word psych or psyche in the dictionary, it would
Mm-hmm.
say breath of life, spirit. And if you look up psychology, it'll say the study of and science of the mind.
Mm.
And so they became interested in that, where did that, what happened, what, how did we lose
Yeah.
that?
Mm-hmm.
And so some of their mentors would have been like Carl Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
He was pretty significant in the day of talk. He was positive psychology. And so
Mm-hmm.
there was a 2 year master's program. I went through that, and it went through all of the different psychologies, all the different ways you can learn. But it's an experience. It was an experiential learning. So it was literally 1 week in a month, and for a whole year, and a week at the end of each year, like a lab and then a practicum. And you were literally working your own process. So
Wow.
it's intense. It was
Mm-hmm.
unbelievable. Had the spiritual not been in there, I don't know that most people would have been able to sustain it, because
Yeah.
to face all of that in a world that doesn't do that, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it gave me a new orientation. The orientation became I'm not this human that has a soul that's trying to understand all these things that are
Yes.
kind of not really always understandable, to
Mm-hmm.
becoming a soul having and using and learning from her human experience.
So
And
that's what was taught in that program
that
because I
that's the initial premise.
yeah. And I fully believe that. And I've learned that just over the last few years. And I have a degree in psychology, but it was very much just about the mind. But that would, that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, in
Mm-hmm.
both of them, like she's a clinical psychologist, and
Yeah.
they both had doctorates in psychology, and they actually were teaching they were teaching at the university level. And
Right.
then they were approached by this gentleman that was a spiritual leader, and he wanted to create a school
Yes.
that actually prepared people to do the things that we often say we're going to do when we go through these curriculums. But it like kind of, I'm nutshelling it.
Yeah.
I don't think these were ever their words, but like to really
Mm-hmm.
actually be the change, right? To
Yeah.
move into that
Yes.
space. So that's why it was so
Yes.
experiential. And they were master educators. And I actually went back 13 years later, ended up auditing the second year, and then I did the third year, which was consciousness, health, and healing.
Mm.
But it employed me with a skill set, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like at least 50 or so skills, and it's it's not like anything else. Actually, a lot of people that do that program leave that program and then kind of don't really know what to do with themselves, because the
Yeah.
rest of the world is no longer like they don't fit, right? And so
Yes.
a lot of people become coaches because they don't really know how to exist in the world as it is.
Yes.
And that's an inner conflict. But the long answer to your question is like that's always been my path. I was reading, books that I could barely understand in high school, because I wanted to understand, essentially at the time I didn't know this, but consciousness.
That is just something that we're not taught.
No, we're not. And
Mm-hmm.
that is probably the thing that is, I live between these two worlds. I'm a
Yeah.
very like intellectual person. I'm a thinker. I'm an analyzer by nature. So I'm in that part of myself often,
Yeah.
and I feel really called to work in that. And then I'm also aware that came through experiences. Like over 10 years ago, I went through the whole yoga teacher training journey, which which shifted me too energetically. I became more
Mm-hmm.
embodied. I became more aware of my softness, and I actually
Mm-hmm.
experienced myself in a way that I never have. That is honestly, I'm still wanting to find that again. I find it difficult to be in that when I'm having to be in the world as much. Um, it's very
I'm glad I'm not the
beautiful.
only one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So most of my life has been me trying to hold this part of me here, why I go do the work that I feel like I have to do, that I care about, but that I have to do so I can make money and take care of myself. And, I didn't grow up with entrepreneurs around me. I didn't grow up with those kinds of models where I would have had like the kind of chutzpah and like resources inner to do what I'm doing now. But
Yeah.
that's what I've been doing. That's why I've gone through my career became about leadership development and organizational
Mm-hmm.
development. And I do have a bucket list desire to get a PhD, probably in like organizational psychology or something cultural
Mm-hmm.
mental, something around that, because I'm
Yes.
so fascinated by that. And the other link I'll just add to this is that
Mm-hmm.
because I spent all my time inside organizations for so long, in that earlier part of my career at Gap Inc., I remember before I became a head of store, I remember having this awareness. I remember actually the exact day that I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, wow, this whole thing that we just did for this executive to come visit was like kind of all made up. Like we just kind of polished it perfectly for them, but it's not the reality every day. And that felt weird and uncomfortable for me. But I also had
Mm-hmm.
this humanity lens of like, wow, this is so fascinating. And I had such an appreciation for all the team who felt so good about being a part of this thing. And then the
Yes.
leaders coming and seeing how it's happening. But there was a lack of candor and authenticity in that
Yeah.
troubled me. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was there, coupled with the fact that I was like, wow, people spend more time at their job. Like that is the biggest influence on a human
Yeah.
life. And I want to be a part of like trying to make that more meaningful. Like, but
Mm-hmm.
because of probably my personality and I'm a Virgo and type A, it became like wanting to help course correct the culture really. But because that was always coming from top down and that wasn't a role I ever really aspired to get at,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still a lot of boomers, in many
Yeah.
ways, it wasn't something I held success. So I just started focusing on the team. I mean, I still
Mm-hmm.
advise C-suite often. It took it took a leader that was more comfortable in their skin to receive my counsel.
Yes. So that is fascinating. How did all of that bring you to helping women with wealth?
Well, I have always wanted to work with women and girls, and
Mm-hmm.
it started in New York when I started becoming more aware. Actually, I start to decide that I wasn't going to go in the upper echelons of leadership then when
Yeah.
I hired my first coach, because I started observing like I don't see myself sitting at that table. I don't think that I would really be welcome there. I don't think that I could really be
Yes.
myself there. And this was before Lean In started with Sheryl Sandberg. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
they like invited her to like be the lead of that,
Mm-hmm.
because she had a lot of prominence, and I think she definitely believed in that. But before that, I had this idea of creating something like that. And again, I just didn't have the ability. Social media and
Mm-hmm.
everything didn't really exist at that point. But it ignited then, and I started doing research around the impact when you educate a girl and what happens inside
Yeah.
communities all over the world. And I'm sure, in a way, I will be honest and say that it was at times, I think, more cerebral than it was integrated. And I realize
Mm.
now what I mean by that is that I hadn't connected with my little girl.
Mm.
I hadn't had any real visceral integration at that time. So I know that it was a part of me wanting that healing and that survival for that part of me and all of us. But it
Yes.
wasn't very, and I'm sure that's why it didn't happen. And
Mm-hmm.
then,
Mm-hmm.
in 2012, when I was leaving my last kind of role, inside the retail, was actually working in tech for Sony at the time. I
Mm-hmm.
conceptualized this idea that I called This Girl, That Girl. And it was really intending to be like this social enterprise. And honestly, that still sits in the waiting. I see it as that project I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned earlier before we started recording. Like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
it really about that. There's so many ideas there, but it's been there. So that's been there. And it's also because I am a woman and I relate more. I feel like I
Mm-hmm.
can be more helpful with that. I feel like I have more authority in that. This year for me especially, it's about just really being candid and not holding back anything for fear, because I think that's what women, I think a lot of people do. I think women, people of color, and I
Mm-hmm.
definitely think women have to edit. And when you have a lifetime of editing, then it's hard to find your real truth where you feel safe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Um,
That's one of my new like self-reflection is how I feel like that personally I have edited myself my whole life. And this is new for me to like really realize that and there's so many things that like I want to say and I start speaking and it's like the words don't come out. It's like where are they? And I believe it's just the way that part of the conditioning.
yeah.
And so that's like a real goal from 2026 is for me to just be able to speak and not feel like that I have to be edited and just let it flow. So I get that.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I feel that you have a very courageous voice. I grew up in California. I grew up in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
I spent time
Mm-hmm.
in San Francisco and then in New York. I lived in Hawaii and Japan too. But my point is like I've lived
Wow.
in pretty
Mm-hmm.
liberal places, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily speaking to an audience that isn't necessarily as comfortable with my purview. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I think your story is so beautiful and powerful and fascinating, because I feel like in a way that was kind of my mom. Like she was born and raised in Johnstown, PA, and lived in Pittsburgh right before she left. But she went west and she ended up going back there, after she retired to be with my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather. But she was kind of, I don't know, I don't, she was different, right?
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
different than
Mm-hmm.
them, and had different values that were part of just who she was, right? I don't know that she would have known that back
Yes.
then. And I think it's
Yeah.
very courageous to be in an environment where you stay and you are that lone voice until,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine, that the more you share, the more you risk, the more your group will come to you, even if it's
Yes.
smaller, but because I know you're not alone, no matter where
Mm-hmm.
you are,
Mm-hmm.
right?
That's right. And I found that because we attract what we are. And so I have found like through the phases of healing and resolving things in my life and realizing who I am and the voice that I want to have, people just show up,
Yeah.
that align and that I can
Yes.
learn from and bounce things off of. And it's been really nice because it's
Yeah.
scary in the beginning, but then when you realize that your people will show up.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. And there's because they're waiting, you know, consciously and
Yeah.
unconsciously, they're waiting. When
Yes.
kind of going back to your question about the wealth thing, what I was going to say is that
Mm-hmm.
initially, this wealth message that I've become really clear on is, first of all, I'll just say,
Yeah.
given what I mentioned earlier about leading my life from a more spiritual context, is that
Mm-hmm.
I, especially now, I'm 54, and I am
Mm-hmm.
really clear that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that my song doesn't stay in me before I leave this planet. If I have
Yeah.
anything to do with it, I'm going to do everything I can,
Mm-hmm.
and that means consistently taking risks. And
Yeah.
what I what I realized was that I'm very much attuning to like receiving. Sometimes people call them pings. I call them like intuitive hits. But like
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
really, when I started this path in, I made the decision around October of 2023. I started my Instagram account on December 1st, 2023. But in October, I said, okay, if I'm going to do this, please speak to me in ways that I can understand. And I
Yes.
promise to listen and to lean in. So nothing was
Mm-hmm.
forsaken. And I can tell you that that has been so helpful for me in so many
Mm.
ways. And so this message around wealth and money and financial freedom came through that, because I would not, the Jennifer that has is a Gen X that has come through this consciousness as well, that still is part of this world, wouldn't have thought that I could talk about that. I would have thought, oh,
Mm.
I have to be a multimillionaire and then I can talk about it.
Yes.
Right?
I
And if
can
you
relate with
told
that.
me that, if
Mm-hmm.
you told me
Mm-hmm.
that, I would be like, and I knew more about you and your story, I'd be like, that's
Yeah.
crazy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how it came. It came over the last year because I am somebody who created a financially solvent life. And really what that means is that I don't live on debt. I don't live
Yeah.
on, I don't have a lifestyle that I cannot pay for. And
Mm-hmm.
it creates a real sense of freedom logistically, but really inwardly.
Yes.
And I did not have that for most of my life. And my
Mm-hmm.
story was often that didn't matter how many figures I had in my salary, I was always living pretty much paycheck to paycheck because I grew up in an
Yeah.
environment where there was never extra, right? So
Yes.
even when I had extra, I
Yes.
found a way to use it, to spend it, to share it, to give it. And that all kind of changed several years ago when I watched I went to it was basically a testimonial of a young woman
Mm-hmm.
who had gotten herself out of debt. She had a lot more debt than me, and I knew she
Mm-hmm.
made a lot less than me, and it was so
Mm-hmm.
profound that I could not ignore it. And I was like, okay, this is my sign. So
Yeah.
I ended up getting on this journey and shifting all that. But it did more inwardly and energetically. And
Mm-hmm.
it's also been about embracing abundance and not putting restrictions. I believe my mom made a lot of choices, even up until her very last significant one, and where she lived was always around not having money. When she wasn't rich, wealthy in
Mm-hmm.
standards, but she had money that she could have used, and she just had it in her mind
Yeah.
that money she couldn't use. And that impacted her quality of life as far as I'm concerned, but that was her path and there
Mm-hmm.
was nothing that we could really do about it. But I really believe that I talk about wealth, and I'm curious of what your thoughts are here, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if when I'm making regular 6, 7 figures, if I'm going to be that woman that shares, let me tell you how much I don't know if I'll do
Yeah. Yeah.
that. I don't want to say I won't, because maybe I might every now and then, because I think that people
Mm-hmm.
need to hear that sometimes. But I probably, well, I shouldn't say this. I don't want to limit myself, but what I was going to say,
Mm-hmm.
some iteration, is that I don't say this as a moral high ground, but I am a very earnest person. I can't take that out of myself and I don't want to. So I
Yeah.
am not going to
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to like show my body just like, and I'm not going to not, but I'm just saying like, I feel like there are so many ways that you can attract more attention towards you that don't come natural to me. And I'm also not going to claim
Yes.
that I can do something for you when I don't know if I really can. And I think people have very
Yes.
big businesses because they do that, a lot.
I agree.
And it's a
I agree.
promise, right? And I think anything's possible,
Mm-hmm.
but I just live in the camp of like I don't want to create that kind of business. So
Absolutely.
so the wealth thing really came through like this is for me it's really about her wealth, her this experience of real wealth, which to me is that you know you're sovereign and you're living sovereign and you basically that you know
Yes.
that you have inner freedom. And even if you don't always
Yeah.
know how to do that, you are committed to that for yourself and all that comes with that. But it's also about her personal brand. Like who is she? No matter what you're doing, I feel like this is definitely important. I've always felt this way and now it's very much talked about. And then her
Mm-hmm.
expression, what did you come
Yeah.
here to do? So those are really, and the underbelly is spirituality and healing.
Mm-hmm.
I am so interested in like I have all these years inside organizations, so I'm so interested in like leadership and all of that it can sometimes like split my energy and focus with all of the noise of like what's the best way to create a business. But that is truly a desire and an
Mm-hmm.
interest of mine. But I'm also really like my podcast is called Heal Your Part. my book
Yeah.
was basically, it's another version of that is a book proposal I'm waiting for when I'm ready to work with a traditional publisher, because it's not a book I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
self-publish. So it is all of that stuff,
I
the
can't wait for your
healing,
book to
the
come out.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But the real wealth, the wealth is because that's what people are more comfortable talking about, because everybody wants to
Yes.
be more financially free. And I think when you
Yes.
start at the physical level, that gives the foundation, you know, but you
Yeah.
have to do the other stuff. That's why I'm doing this workshop, but I really want to show people, even in 90 minutes, that I can show you some of the very clear components of how you can understand what is
Yeah.
underneath how you relate with money. Because a template's not going to help you, a spreadsheet's not going to help
Yeah.
you, an app alone is not really going to help you. We all need
No.
You need to understand more the psychology behind it, right? Underneath it. Otherwise, you'll just
Yes.
create the same thing again. This is what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I completely I see that. And I agree. And people do like talking about wealth, money, financial freedom, that
Yeah.
does speak to people because most people that's what they're after, right?
Yeah.
But so many times they don't realize that there is, like you said, the psychological and the spiritual components to that, which is the
Yes.
foundation of everything, like a life of abundance.
From what you just shared, I just heard this thought of like, it's like, that's so my jam. Like, I could just talk about that all freaking day
Me
a thousand,
too.
right? Like, that is so my
Yes.
jam.
Yeah.
And because I do really love teaching and I really understand adult
Mm-hmm.
learning theory, and I love
Mm-hmm.
like finding that spot that helps somebody open up. And I also
Yeah.
had really amazing educators, like the people that ran my master's program were like, I mean, and they were so yin and yang. So there was just this like most powerful experience of seeing how
Yeah.
teaching could occur. And also what the premise of it was that the root of the word education is educare, which means to draw out from within. So that's
Mm.
essentially saying, we're not telling you
Mm.
something you don't know. We're helping you
Yeah.
discover what's already within
That's right.
you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where like
Yes.
my analytical mind and everything gets kind of geeked out, because it's like what I understand about humans is that we have an ego, and we are mostly over identified with that ego. And that ego wants to
Yeah.
always know that it's in charge. It wants to know because it wants to know it's safe, right? I mean, that's very
Yes.
primal.
Yeah.
It's not a character flaw.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of how we are designed because of how we've been socializing for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so when you realize that someone's not trying to tell you something that they know and you don't know, you can relax. You can be like, oh, you're not trying to one up me. You're
Yes.
not like, that's often what's happening when people don't even realize it, right?
Yes.
So there's that. But the thing that also gets me like juiced up is that I think that this sometimes I think I used to think, oh, this happens for everybody. So I don't think it happens for everybody, because I think if you are not ready to really stand in that sandbox of that kind of honesty, and you've
Yep.
had, like, if that's not part of this lifetime perhaps, or like you have no experience in there, you can't even conceive of it, that can be very, very scary. And I have so much empathy for that, and that's very real. And
Mm-hmm.
I do
It
think there
is.
are a lot more people that just haven't had the experience, that when they're like, they like, I mean, that's why all these thought leaders have so many followers, because there's millions of people that are like, yeah. So it's like when somebody like has that aha about themselves, to me, that's fortification. That's the kind of self-esteem building that you've been searching for your whole life, that we all think our parents should have given it, but their parents did, and their parents didn't. And it's not even that. It's like it's something we
Yes.
have to do and find for ourselves. And when you start to
Yeah.
have those nuggets, you rebuild yourself. You become more aware of how
Yes.
powerful and beautiful and amazing that you are. And that's what I'm into.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm right there with you completely. Um, and I could talk about this stuff forever and a day too. This is what it's about. And I was so naive in the beginning when I started um, waking up to this stuff, this beautiful journey that everybody wanted to receive this just like I did, you know?
Mm,
And then you find out that they're not ready.
yeah.
And you can't really hear and understand what you're not ready for. Um, and so that was eye opening for me. So I kind of had to step back and respect those boundaries and meet people where they were, right?
Yes.
So what do you find is the biggest obstacle for women in the beginning?
It is the multi-million dollar question. And I do believe I know the answer, and I don't think that it's consciously identified in a lot of women. So they would probably
Yeah.
say, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
But I've just been like watching and studying, and also I'm her. Like I have to
Yeah.
face myself sometimes and be like,
Yeah.
wow, like look what
Yes.
you're doing, Um, so I see it as a generational thing too, very much so.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think the millennials are kind of like another younger version of Gen X, not quite the same. Gen
Mm-hmm.
X have been known to be sarcastic, but the latchkey kid was like, they can do it all. Millennials had
Yeah.
a lot of them had a different upbringing. The younger ones, the older ones, I think are pretty close to Gen X. I know
Yeah.
women in their mid to late 40s that are considered young Gen X, late millennial.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of crossover. But millennials and then younger are
Mm-hmm.
having a very different experience. So the Gen Z and now the Alpha or whatever they all are, I don't know them all. They
Mm-hmm.
are so hungry. They are totally open. They are more self-aware because they've had more access to
Mm-hmm.
things. They have different
Yeah.
value system. They don't need they're not their ego's not tied in the ways that, us that have been here longer are. They grew up with all these things, all these tools, all these devices. We
Yeah.
haven't. So there's all of these things that separate us. But I would say the woman that I believe I'm here to serve is in many ways the woman who is so over identified with her head. Like, because
Mm.
that is what's kept her safe. And
Yeah.
that's where her success is. She's
Yeah.
she's a kick-ass woman that has created a
Mm-hmm.
lot. She's been the wind beneath everything,
Yeah.
and she has a lot of street cred, and she has a lot of evidence to prove it.
Yeah.
And even if she's been on this journey of personal growth and has done things, she still has so much more practice in being put together and being composed that
Yes.
it's so foreign to her to reach those emotions. And and
Mm.
and I think that comes on top of our parents' generation and their parents, that we have
Yeah.
not honored just the natural state of a human being. Like the fact that we still say shh when someone's crying. Like that's how we trap things in people's bodies. There's
Yes.
nothing natural about that. We created that and we
Yeah.
manufactured it and we perpetuate it. And that's exactly in a nutshell, I think what keeps women disembodied is because
Yeah.
they don't know how to feel it. If they haven't gone and done
Yeah.
that work, they don't know how to feel it. And that's why Brene Brown's work was so right, because she starts talking about vulnerability and it became palatable to a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people because she was a researcher, because she is, because she got a
Yeah.
PhD. Like it gave it efficacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Probably even to her,
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's a lot of things in the way, but I think it's the not being embodied, and I think it's not really knowing
Mm-hmm.
how, really experientially, how to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And until a woman decides that for herself, I think she will keep hitting that ceiling, her own inner ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you help women become embodied and to learn how to be vulnerable?
Well, it's a journey I'm on right now. I am leading I'm leading a 12-week,
Mm-hmm.
I mean a 7-week experience real wealth immersion
Mm-hmm.
right now that is,
Mm-hmm.
has that. that through line of like the nervous system. I
Yeah.
do think I'll be creating more experiences like that. I do think I have to appeal to
Mhm.
her mind. And
Mhm.
part of that courageous commitment to myself is I am going to be talking more about healing this year and not worry about how
Mhm.
many views my video is getting and
Yeah.
just trust God because that has literally been all
Mhm.
I've been wanting to talk about since as long as I can remember. And
Yeah.
I don't feel like I created that. I feel like I came here
Mm.
with that mission and I need to
Mhm.
like stand in it. And
Mhm.
um, so it is through her mind.
Yeah.
And it's also about, you know how there's that thing of like the early adopter or there's like you've seen these things online. I feel like Gary Vaynerchuk does such a good job of sharing all this kind of stuff with us, but one of them is like I forget, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's like
Mhm.
or Alex Hermosi, like no one cheers for you at this stage. They cheer for you when you've already won, right? Or
Mhm.
like when someone's still under a certain 1,000 followers or 3,000 followers, but once they get up to a certain point, then people start just blindly following them, right? Because they now want to be a part
Yes.
of it.
Yes.
So I feel like more
Yes.
of that has to happen. There's a psychology there. So
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
I'm interested. The reason why I want to talk more about healing is because I realize that I have to, meet people where they are, but I have to model, I have to walk the talk. So I have to really
Yeah.
honor the truth of my heart, the truth of my spirit, the truth of the message that's coming through me. And
Mhm.
that might actually attract a younger woman. But I
Yeah.
feel like that's what it is. It's about creating that experience and knowing that that will expand and bring in, you know, but I have no doubt that like the women that are supporting, that are engaged with me right now and are trusting me
Mhm.
are wanting to support me. I think that's the first
Mhm.
thing. They're wanting to support me. So it's not for them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not fully,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Right?
Absolutely. Mhm.
And as soon as I have
I
10,000
see that.
followers or
Yes.
whatever, they're going to come. More of them are going to
Mhm.
come because people want to be a part of that, you
Yes.
know? So,
Mhm.
I just say that to share what I've observed in like, and what I see in the
Yeah.
psychology of like things, especially in this online space for the last couple of years. It's been fascinating. But it's really staying true to myself, but then also finding that sweet spot of
Mm.
staying authentic to myself and creating experiences that will help her enter, right?
Yeah.
So it's appealing to what's happening right now, like how
Mhm.
how I enrolled women for this program I'm in right now. It was talking about what's happening in the world and how
Yeah.
we've been kind of like throttled, and it was about meeting this moment and creating a space to actually be more conscious in how we want to enter, not because we want to just create resolutions, but
Mm.
because we want to do something different and we recognize we're going through something we never have before, right?
Yes.
So it's
Mhm.
that, and then it's unfolding. Like I'm continuing to learn. If we did more stuff in person, I would be creating more like those kinds of experiences, and that's also where my strengths lie. I've done a lot of,
Mhm.
teaching and a lot of facilitation and training, and I've been a yoga teacher for over 10 years. So all of that's available. But I'm also interested in creating something that I can
Mhm.
scale, not just because I want to make a shit ton of money for myself, but because
Yeah.
I want to reach more women. I know there are many more
Yes.
women out in the world that are ready,
They are.
you know?
Yes.
So in the scheme of things,
And
there aren't as many women like me in the scheme of things, right?
yeah.
There's more men.
Yes, I know what you mean. Absolutely. Women, I believe, are starting to discover that they do want more and and they're worthy. I mean, I think that, I guess personally speaking, self worth has been lacking, I guess, for women.
Yeah.
It was just within the last few years that I learned that it was okay to be vulnerable
Yeah.
and honest and transparent and authentic, which that's what I strive to do now more than anything. Like authenticity, that's my big thing. And but before I was so afraid to be vulnerable. and to show someone that I didn't have everything together and I felt that I had to edit myself, right?
Yeah.
And I just I think that women are starting to realize that none of us really have it all together all the time.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
okay to be vulnerable and
Yeah.
want more. And
Yeah.
we are worthy of that, right?
Yes. Yes. I will say that like that, that description that I was saying, especially around Gen X women, was completely learned. I mean, there was no space,
Yeah.
right? I have a
Yeah.
mom.
Yes.
I had a mom. She's passed now, but I had this mom who was like
Mm-hmm.
definitely emotional, and she went through some really serious things that impacted all
Yeah.
of our lives because she never did any healing really around it. And
Mm. Mm-hmm.
when we got towards the end of her life and she had this big fall, and I finally convinced her to try to get some therapy because she was really scared. I was ministering to her,
Yeah.
and so she was open to it when she was really vulnerable. She actually never saw it through, but she was really open to it. And she got this, like,
Yeah.
which kind of pissed me off. They sent her like this 30-page questionnaire that she had to fill out before she got a therapist. I mean, she
Uh,
never got past that, but I went to help her fill that
yeah.
out, because I was traveling back and forth
Mm-hmm.
to see her during this time a lot. And there was a question around domestic violence, of which she
Mm.
was on the receiving end of, and she hadn't checked that box. And I said,
Yeah.
Mom,
Mm.
oh, yeah, or over time, she's like, I didn't realize that was trauma, all these other things. And she's like, I didn't,
Mm.
I didn't think I had anything to talk about. I mean, it just wasn't even part of their
Yeah.
vernacular, right? So Gen X women are
Yes.
a product very close to that, and it just happens to be, that's what I mean. Like my spirit, they say old soul, but I also feel like I was just born early because I always was on this
Yeah.
path. What comes easier to me is not the norm, and I don't use that as the baseline.
Yeah.
And I also have the conditioning. Like I also had this awareness
Mm-hmm.
of like I could do all this stuff and I could cry and I could do all these programs and I could definitely hit all these challenges in it, but I still wasn't really being vulnerable with my friends. I wasn't really asking for help.
Right.
I would judge
Yes.
them when they were like always asking for help because I was judging like, come on, get it together, right? That's conditioning, right? And then once I like
Yes.
realized that,
Completely.
right? How I was like
Yeah.
not allowing myself to have that kind of love and support. Everything changed. I didn't even have those triggers. I wasn't
Yeah.
even judging it. I was just, but it was learned. I had to teach myself that. So I agree that we are
Mm-hmm.
shifting. When you have so much experience doing it one way, we just have more time in that. You have to be able to,
Yeah.
life is so full. Like for me, it's my mission. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not a question of do I have time? It's part of my life. But I think most
Yeah.
people that are not on a personal
Yes.
growth path or it's not their business, it's ancillary. It's over here.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's like I'm
Mm.
not gonna, it's
Mm-hmm.
not part of, it's not like I gotta eat dinner first. Like, no, I'm gonna watch that thing first. Like that's just me, right? So
Yes.
that's different,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
early on I had to get that. That was definitely probably like more like 5, 6 years ago when I started working one-on-one with clients. It's like, okay, I mean, I have a great skill set and training, but
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that, I was not the norm in that way
Yeah.
was definitely, a key learning. But I do agree. I think even the whole worthy and you know, I'll share something actually that might be helpful to a listener.
Mm-hmm.
I too definitely I was making choices and living a life that was not living in the awareness that I am worthy, for sure.
Yeah.
There was a gentleman I was dating, and I saw the signs early on. And I wasn't even actually looking to date when we got together, but he had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things that I wanted, and I had been living in this awareness that I still hadn't met him, like whoever he was, right? The things that I wanted.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
now understand a lot more,
Mm-hmm.
but at the time, so when I would meet a
Mm-hmm.
man that was like better than the last one, I think I would get drawn in there because I'm like, oh, I've never like, right? And I didn't realize like really what that
Yes.
was, right? But so So then
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
but I wouldn't really be making choices that were, it's like, oh, he's sharing these things that I've never had. Oh, he's smart. Oh, he's educated. Oh, I really do have a thing for intelligence. Not like you're better than, but it's a turn on
Yeah.
to me when somebody is
Mm-hmm.
intellectually minded and is interested in things and experiences and history and whatever. So he was a lot of things, and he was a talker. He was an orator, and I definitely, Barack Obama all day long, like not him, but like, you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
appreciate when somebody can speak and hold. Maya Angelou, these people that were just beautiful orators. And he was a powerful
Yes.
orator. So he was also very persuasive with that. Fast forward,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, 5 or 6 months later, there was definitely challenges. And we had this experience one day that
Mm-hmm.
when we hung up, we were on the phone. My energy from before I got on the phone with him to after it was like night and day. And because I have this practice of neutral
Mm.
observation, I was like, whoa, and I
Mm-hmm.
was having this reaction that to me, I was like, what's happening? I almost felt like it was hormonal because it was so powerful. I
Yes.
was so
Yes.
upset.
Yes.
And I think the next day when I was on a walk, I was listening to this podcast with these young women, definitely millennials, they're so smart,
Mm-hmm.
younger millennials. And they were talking about essentially what I heard was when your self esteem and your self worth are in alignment, you will no longer be able to accept these things that are not
Mm.
congruent with that. And how I
Yeah.
related to that was that I was abandoning myself, and every other part of me was like, what are you doing? Like, we don't do that anymore, you know?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I mean, I just feel like those kinds of markers are things I pay attention to because they help me go, oh yeah, they help me like retain them and get them
Yeah.
viscerally. But that was when I realized,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I don't need to question my worth anymore. So when I start to make choices that are mirroring this old belief, that's what I need to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm. Do you find that difficult for women to embrace and really be able to um, stop and say, hey, that is an old belief, and that is why my body is reacting the way it is?
Yes, I think a lot of women don't have that language, right? Which is one of the
Yeah.
motivations
Yeah.
on the real wealth immersion. The immersion was really like, let me
Mm-hmm.
walk you through 7 weeks of these stages that, by the way, we could actually do one a month and it would be powerful, but it's difficult to get someone to
Yeah.
commit to that long of a journey. But it's like,
Yeah.
let me introduce you to these different things, knowing this is where the educare comes in, knowing that there's going to be a piece in that 7 week
Mm-hmm.
journey that's going to speak to you. And that's the piece. That's your doorway in.
Yeah.
That's the way in.
Yes.
That's your unconscious and that's your inner knowing saying, this is for us. This is our beginning.
Mm-hmm.
This makes sense. This feels I get this, you know. And so I think there are more and more women that are having that, especially like, the whole somatic experience, the breath work, all of, I don't
Mm-hmm.
really, I'm not somebody that's into all the different medicinal drugs and all those experiences that people are doing. But that has been really
Right.
pivotal in giving people new
Mm-hmm.
understandings of who they are. So
Yes.
that is all happening, but women have had to
Mm-hmm.
become disembodied to survive because
Yeah.
we have been we've been forced to maintain some version of ourselves to satiate the male gaze.
Yes. I agree
And that's the
completely.
patriarchy, right? So that is happening,
Yes.
whether you are a man that doesn't support the male patriarchy, like you feel you're more evolved, there's so many layers of the impact of that. It's kind of like
Yeah.
we think we're not racist, but we don't understand really what that is. If you don't start to learn how that really has showed up over time, then you can't really know it, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, because I'm on a learning journey in this lifetime, it is easier for me. It is always been
Mm-hmm.
easier for me to say, what? Like, I don't know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Like, that's,
Yeah.
I can protect myself in other ways, but not knowing something, I find power in saying that. Also, because I often feel like
Hmm.
everybody feels the same way. And I love being the one that says, what? You
Yeah.
know, my ego likes that. Let me help everybody here, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think that that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. Great points. Great points. And I mean, and you're right too about racism. Many people, they don't truly know what that is,
Mm-mm.
and they wouldn't consider themselves racist, but it has evolved over the years, and there are like aspects of it, and it parts of it goes deep. And so until you really understand what something is, you really, I mean, you don't know.
Anytime you catch yourself
Yeah.
generalizing a group, you are perpetuating a bias.
Yes.
And it doesn't make you see the thing is, and this is what I really want to I'm believing if it's meant to come in this form, it's going to be in my TEDx talk.
Yeah.
But I
Mm-hmm.
I the thing is we have no space for making mistakes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As a
Mm-hmm.
society, we don't
Society. Yeah.
we have not owned this very natural part that you cannot learn without failure. Like people talk about it, but it
Yes.
hasn't changed the way we relate. So
Mm.
people are punished, right? People, and not saying there aren't people that need to, there's accountability. I'm not trying to erase that.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying completely.
Yeah. So if there's so much shame
Yeah.
attached to making mistakes and thinking that you should already know, right? Those are two
Yes.
powerful like societal misbeliefs that have keeping us stuck.
Yes.
Because then
You're right.
I'll hide it even from myself then.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And that's one thing I found, that people lie to themselves way more than they think they do. And they believe it. Like that you really can't see the truth. I just
Yes.
find that so interesting. And I mean, I've done it, of
Yes.
course.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. It's
and it
protection.
can be, it's protection. That's right. And it can be, the journey can be difficult once you realize, and you become aware. That self awareness is, I mean, of course, key, right?
I remember when I started my yoga teacher training journey,
Mm-hmm.
and the first I did it with this organization that was very, very well known here across the globe, across the US, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely here in
Mm-hmm.
California. And they had like a 200-hour program, and then if you want to do the professional program, it was 300 hours. And I joined the
Mm-hmm.
200-hour program, and it was like every weekend for like 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember on the second weekend, they were um, asking us to teach a pose.
Mm-hmm.
And I was horrified. And luckily, I have a practice of like self-reflecting. And I said to myself, you don't want to teach a pose, but you're in teacher training. Hmm, like, what? And so I just kind of like, did a little excavation. I was like, oh,
Yes.
I don't want to not know what the hell I'm doing. I don't want to not be I don't want to
Yes.
not. And then honestly, thank God, immediately I was like,
Mm.
oh my God, how many things
Yeah.
have I missed out on because I didn't want to
Yes.
not know what I was doing? Like everything I've
Yes.
learned to do came with steps of not knowing. I mean, it was so
That's
like,
right.
right? That
Yes.
it's still uncomfortable I actually joined this pitch fest with this Latinas in podcasting. And I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't even believe how nervous I was. I was like, "What?" I mean, I haven't because I haven't been practicing pitching myself.
Yeah.
But if I
Yes.
wasn't like thinking I was going to have to do something, I would just be talking. I'm very clear on who I am and what I'm doing. But
Right.
there's all these new skills when you're creating a business and in trying to tell people who you are and what you do and what's your elevator pitch and
Yeah.
all these things that it's really uncomfortable when you don't know. And
Yeah.
I'm still really getting better at that. So that part doesn't like get better. It just becomes like that's the price of entry. Like that's not my barrier.
Yes.
But had I not known that, I was, and honestly, it was that realization of like, I am not, this is like I was in my 40s. I'm like, I am not letting more time in my life. I will not miss more things because I don't
Yeah.
want to look silly. For who?
Yes, exactly. I had that very conversation with a friend this week, and I told her I'm just not ready. Like we were talking about something, I was like, I'm just not ready for that. She's like, you just got to do it. And so it was like, you're right. Like, why am I holding back? Just because I'm nervous or I'm doubting myself or I don't feel like I'm ready? That's just fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
because it's new. It's entry, like you said. Hmm?
yeah. And you just reminded me like the statistics around that people, what is it like? People are more afraid of public speaking than dying. Something crazy like that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right.
And we
Because
were
we don't
talking
know
about
how to look
public speaking.
silly.
That's exactly. Yeah,
Because we don't
that's
know how to look
right.
like that to me is the biggest piece of evidence of how much growth we have as a human race. Like,
I know. I know. I know. So talking about that, do you feel like people don't step into their purpose because of fear and because, like you said, it's entry and they just believe that, since I'm having doubts or fear about it, then it's not the right thing?
yes, I mean, I do think that we question ourselves way more. This goes back to the which we didn't really talk much about, but really is one of my most powerful messages is like we are not internally referenced. We are so externally
Yeah.
referenced that we don't have a solid sense of ourselves and our own constitution and what we're like. It's more just taking stock. Because if we were to actually
Yeah.
take stock, and that didn't mean that we're being proud or conceited or all these other things that have
Yeah.
gotten in the way from us acknowledging who we are and what we've accomplished, if we would just own what is actually true, right? Then
Yeah.
uh,
Yes.
we would be more empowered. And it what goes alongside of that is like the experience you got along that path. How many times you hit a wall and move forward? How many times you made a mistake and had to figure that out?
Yeah.
All of those all those times you put your foot in your mouth and you're like, what did I just do? All that. To
Yeah.
me, when we
Mm-hmm.
stay connected to that, it can
Mm-hmm.
help us. But I don't think those are all part of the same, to me, the same kind of like strands of how we have not empowered the human race with how we tend to
Yes.
raise people up. And our K through 12 education system is missing some pivotal education.
Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so we don't have that. We don't have that awareness of how powerful we are. There's the imposter syndrome. One of the coaches I worked with, he
Yeah.
would say, you have the expertise fallacy. Like, how many more certificates and degrees do you need before you think that you're enough, Jennifer? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
and then there is that not wanting to get it wrong, right? So there's that.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing about that is that it is challenging to change. You
Yeah.
know, it's challenging to change only because of how we've been evolving as a human race. Because we are not
Yes.
living in conscious awareness that we're actually changing all the time. We're just not thinking about it, looking at it that way. So we think, I don't want that to change. But like change is happening, and so I mean,
Yeah.
wow, it's happening right now more than ever. So it's
Yeah.
happening, and we have more ability to work with that. But because of that mindset, it can feel very difficult. But if you're also trying to do
Mm-hmm.
something that you haven't done before, you have to be somebody you haven't been before. And
That's right.
you have to be willing to walk in that beginner's mindset. You have to be willing to ask for
Yeah.
help. You have to really be like one of the things that Tony Robbins shared that really resonated with me. He's like, the
Mm-hmm.
people that create these things, it's because they have. He said he's like interviewed over the 50 wealthiest men, like these like private equity people who have amassed more
Mm-hmm.
wealth, financial wealth, and the through line is a hunger. It's a hunger,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like that inner
Yes.
drive and women's energy has been split in more places than men, right? Women have had to take care of
Yeah.
everything and everybody, and it's still the role that we're being asked to do constantly. So it's not like I'm trying to compare
Yes.
women and men, but there's a drive. And for women, you have to be willing to face the fact that the world's going to call you selfish. because you're going to
Yeah.
call yourself
Yeah.
selfish, right? That
Yes.
you, who do you think you
Yes.
are, right? You're going to
Mm-hmm.
get judged, and
Yeah.
there's a young woman that I've been following, and that was the woman I mentioned earlier that I was on her training earlier, which is basically her just doing like a webinar talking about a, a particular subject that came through in this
Mm-hmm.
vision board workshop, I guess she did. And it was like, how are you, they were at, her community was asking her, how are you handling what's happening in the world? Like, how are you staying so like, okay, you know?
Yeah.
And so I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but what was really profound about that is that she was just on The Real Housewives, and her name is
Mm-hmm.
Amanda Francis. I don't
Mm-hmm.
watch those shows, so I don't, but I did
Yeah.
hear things every now and then, and I think that they try to create drama because that's what gets people's attention.
That's what people want. Yeah.
Well, it's also because we haven't experimented enough with the fact that people actually like to watch things that feel really good too. I mean, that's why those videos
Yes,
online have
exactly.
millions and millions of views. But so apparently, like she was, had some tough things to handle there because, and I didn't watch it, but I think that she's a very self-possessed woman. She is not looking to
Mm-hmm.
the world or others to fortify or validate her. Like she's
Yeah.
always kind of been that way, right? And so, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a humility about her, and there's a consciousness about her. She's very aware of her privilege. She
Mm-hmm.
talks about it. She's very open.
Yeah.
I mean, she had a set of twins, and one of them passed away at birth. So she's been through
Mm.
some stuff, but
Yeah.
she has a lot of people that hate her. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of people. A lot
Yeah.
of women,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to stop her. But she also has this community. I mean, there was like 600 people on this call,
Oh,
and
wow.
1,200 people signed up for it because they'll watch the recording.
Yeah.
And that's just a
Mm-hmm.
fraction of her community. So, it's what we allow, like people that are successful online, they block every single person they know because then they
Yeah.
will edit themselves. Right? So there's things that you
Yes.
can do, but it is,
Yes.
the headline I'm trying to say is this is not your get out of jail free card, and it is challenging. It is
Yeah.
challenging.
And I think it's important to the fact, like everything that you were talking about, you brought it up earlier, is that it's okay to make mistakes. We're going to make
Yes.
mistakes during our growth journey, right?
Yes, and I think I guess my message is like just accept that that is something that you don't know how to do because
Yes.
you're born at this time in human history, and we can all acknowledge the fact that that's not something that we know how to do as a society. I want to
Mm-hmm.
believe that that's going to
Mm-hmm.
change. If that doesn't
Yeah.
change, we won't really shift like what we're seeing right now in the world. Besides, like the
Yeah.
whole patriarchy exists within this
Mm-hmm.
chasm of your value is based on how much power you have, right?
Yeah.
And so that then removes the access of all the things that help us know ourselves dimensionally other ways.
Yeah.
The fact that
Yes.
all these like things that I guess we could call the white elephants in the room, there's all these things that are not new ideas, but we haven't shifted
Yeah.
them because we haven't decided, we haven't made it a priority. And it's not easy, right? Because humans can complicate things and there's a lot of us.
Yeah.
But my point really is like let it be okay. Like just acknowledge all of the real challenges of being
Yeah.
alive and the human journey. Like sometimes just it's important to
Mm-hmm.
like just write them all down so you can just acknowledge them, and then you just decide,
Mm-hmm.
is that going to stop me? Is that going to stop me? Is that you can
Mm.
decide. I'm just saying
Yes.
bring conscious awareness. When you bring conscious awareness, you
Yes.
do make different choices.
So if you could leave the listeners with one thing
Hmm.
with this conversation, what would it be?
So many things come forward, but the main thing
Mm-hmm.
is like if you want to create something different, if any part of your life you would
Yeah.
like to be different, you is like it's not looking the way that you thought it would or should.
Yeah.
The way to get there is by learning more about yourself, is by
Mm-hmm.
centering yourself, not saying that it's just about you and becoming this independent person way over here. It's recognizing that metaphor of like putting your oxygen mask on first. It's because you will potentially pass
Mm-hmm.
out in an emergency, right? And you can't help anybody else.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You cannot really do much from
Mm-hmm.
dealing with half a portion of your capacity, you know?
Yeah.
So getting to know yourself, getting curious, like letting it be a spiritual social scientist. Like, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
What do I care about? What am I curious about? What breaks my heart? Like, what triggers me? Like, all of
Mm-hmm.
that is the beginning of becoming more self aware, but also
Mm-hmm.
become healing and becoming aware that like it's that road, it's that path that will
Mm-hmm.
lead you closer and closer and experiencing more of what it is that you really want to be experiencing on
Yes.
that journey, because it's everything is mirroring you back to you. Everything is a
Mm-hmm.
reflection of you. So why not wake up to that so that at least you're doing it fully awake? Because when you are awake,
Yes.
you will absolutely make different choices for yourself.
Mm, absolutely. That is beautiful. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
So, how can everybody find you, get in touch with you, and what services do you offer?
Well, I run groups and I also work with women one
Mm-hmm.
on one. I am building
Mm-hmm.
a membership that will be around, this journey of wealth and real wealth. And
Mm-hmm.
anyone can reach me via my website, which is just my name, jenniferherrera.com. I'm on
Mm-hmm.
TikTok and I am Jennifer Herrera. If you're a TikTok person, that's probably where
Mm-hmm.
I'm there every day. I'm building a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
It's at the same thing. I am Jennifer Herrera. And then I am on Instagram
Mm-hmm.
at Self Mastery with Jennifer. And
Mm-hmm.
any of those, and then my podcast, obviously it's as I mentioned earlier, it's my podcast is titled Heal Your Part, and it's really focused
Mm-hmm.
on the inner and outer journey of the individual but the collective. So I'm talking with
Yeah.
leaders, I'm talking with people that are doing healing work in the world. I'm also just talking
Mm-hmm.
about the things that I've learned through my education in spiritual psychology over 20 years ago, coupled with the way that I've been
Yeah.
applying it with myself and others for over 2 decades. So it might be worth someone's while if they're interested in that.
I will have everything in the description. So, this has been absolutely amazing. And when your book comes out, I would love for you to come back. Let's talk about that.
Oh, thank you. I would love that.
Yes. Jennifer, thank you so, so much. And this has been an absolute honor.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for reaching out on TikTok
Mm-hmm.
because I think that's not
Mm-hmm.
always something that we do enough of. So I appreciate that. And I just really admire and encourage you to continue on your path, because every
Mm-hmm.
single one of us is here to serve and to be like
Yeah.
a healing light in the world that only we can be. And you are on it. And you are on
Yes.
it in a very brave way. And if I can ever
Thank
do
you.
anything to support you, please do not hesitate to
Mm-hmm.
reach out to me.
Absolutely. And thank you so much. And the same here. And we will definitely talk soon. As you reflect on the conversation with Jennifer, I invite you to notice what stood out, not only intellectually, but in your body. Because insight alone doesn't change our lives. What changes us is when the meaning we've lived from begins to soften, dissolve, and no longer feel true. If this episode resonated, take a moment to ask yourself what meaning you've been carrying and whether it still belongs to who you are now. And remember, you are not alone on this journey, and you're exactly where you're meant to be. See you next time.